having tough conversations about race. People want to understand and learn how to create change. But conversation is just that. It's talking. And while that's insightful, action is powerful. Racism speaks to a system of disproportionate opportunities. Policies and practices were created to stop Black people and people of color from achieving upward economic and social mobility. First, we have to dismantle systemic racism. It is pervasive and touches every area of our lives, from business, incarceration, and government, to housing, banking, and healthcare. Let's talk to a couple of folks in the technology industry. So we have two people here with us today, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Risha. Thank you for having me. My name is Obum Ukabam. I am the head of admissions and marketing manager for the Hoberton School Tulsa, which is a 2-year software engineering school.
Great. And then we have Michelle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Mullen, Senior Manager of Talent and Culture at Samsung in North America.
Thank you to both of you for being here today. Now, the tech industry gets a lot of heat when it comes to diversity, and it has been for many years. You know, you watch the numbers come out and the percentages are so low regarding diversity. First and foremost, how can we get better representation? Michelle, what's some of the things that maybe you guys are doing at Samsung?
It's a real growing process for us. And I think the toughest thing for us is being a Korean company that's operating in the United States. And there is a lot of choice out there on who you could work for. So it's really, really difficult. It's very competitive. Some of the things that we've been trying to do is really focus on diversity and inclusion initiatives, really supporting and embracing ERGs that are organically growing in our organization, taking a look at some tools and practices that we have from a hiring perspective to try and increase some of our percentages to have a little bit more of a diverse workforce. Mm-hmm. It's a growing learning process, and we're constantly evolving.
Thanks. And I would like to ask you, Obum, what does systemic racism in the tech industry look like?
Yes, thank you. It has many faces. We can speak about systemic racism and how what technology is used for. We could talk about systemic racism in the workplace. And so when you talk about systemic racism and the kind of technology that we're using in today's society, we see it in our social media. We see it in our face recognition technology. We see it everywhere because if we have algorithms and all these things that are used to help us, fight crime, for instance. And if it's bias, if it's biased against people of color, Black people, or Latinx communities, it's really, like you said, the system's working, but it's not good. It's messing up a lot of people's lives. So when you look at that, you have to also look at technology in the workplace. You've talked about how Silicon Valley is very white, very white male dominated, and if anything, you have white males and you have a lot of Asians, but you don't have a lot of Latinx people, Black people. And why is that? It's because they have this thing they call culture fit in Silicon Valley. So even when you're being interviewed, they're asking you, are you a good fit in our culture? Well, if your culture is predominantly white males, of course I'm not gonna, I might not jump out as a fit to be in your culture, because you're not asking me if I fit well with the job that I'm doing. You're asking me if I'm going to fit well with my colleagues. And if they're all white men, that's not fair to me, because you're asking me questions like, do I like Radiohead? I mean, I like that band. I may like Usher, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to do my job well. It doesn't mean I'm not as skilled in technology. So I think systemic racism has many faces in technology, and it's very detrimental to our society because technology is running the world right now.
Exactly. And Michelle, being from such a large company, is that something that you guys are facing? And when you talk about AI and you talk about bias and technology, is that something that you're facing from your role or within Samsung?
I think for us, it's really important to utilize some of the technology that already exists, and how can we internalize it with some of the processes that we have.
Mhm.
And so AI is so fascinating to me, and I have a lot to learn in that particular space. But utilizing technology for, let's say gender neutral language in your job descriptions,
Mhm.
so that you're able to attract specific talent, skilled talent into your organization, I think is really key. It's a lot of things that we haven't been able to maximize on in the past.
Mhm.
From an HR perspective, we never had that technology where you can think about masculine words or feminine words or
Mhm.
negative words or positive words. So our specific area is really evolving and at a rapid pace,
Mhm.
especially when you're in the high tech industry, I think is really important. But there's also little things that you could also do in terms of, removing the person's name in the resume, so that you give more of an unconscious bias is like off the table, and really giving the candidate an opportunity to stand out
Mhm.
and be present during the process, the hiring process. So there's also things you could do without the use of technology, I think, as well, to help increase the diversity in your organization.
Right. And let's talk about hiring a little bit. One of the things that I hear a lot that I find extremely frustrating is when we start talking about hiring, you will hear people say, we have to find the most qualified candidates. And it drives me crazy, but I would love to know how both of you hear that and what we can do to start moving people away from the thought process that diverse candidates are not the most qualified.
Hmm.
Well,
Whoever wants to take that.
well, yeah. I mean, I could speak on a little bit of that. When we say we have to have the most qualified, again, it goes back to what their culture's already set upon. So when we look at the software engineering industry, for instance, when we think of a software engineer, we think of these tech guys, you think of a white male.
Mhm.
So to everybody else, even black people, to even brown people, we think of technology as white male. So we have imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
So we struggle with ourselves feeling qualified, let alone the people who are hiring us thinking we're qualified. So that is the reason we have a lot of imposter syndrome. We make these heroes. We make Mark Zuckerberg. He's our hero. We amplify these white male as the saviors of technology. So we already don't feel like we belong at the table. And
Mhm.
there and with these messages and with the systems that are in place right now, it's kind of like the crabs in the barrel effect, where we're just struggling to get anything right. We're fighting each other to get anything, and the fact remains that if this system continues to just amplify white males, we will never be able to feel qualified. They would never feel that we are qualified, even though we are. So, what
Mhm.
we need to do is, I know there's biases. We're supposed to have blind bias in hiring, right? We should take the
Mhm.
names out. That's all good too. But I also want to advocate we need to now amplify black voices, amplify black. So now we need to intentionally hire black and brown people. They are qualified, right? We don't have
Mhm.
to have this notion that well we're just hiring them to fit. No, we have a lot of qualified people. Is where you're looking is it may be your issue. If you're only going to Stanford and MIT, which already has their own systemic issues, right, of recruiting people, then you need to go to HBCUs. You need to
Mhm.
intentionally find the black talent that's there already. You need to do that instead of just making excuses that they're not qualified. Where the places you're looking do not give us a chance to be qualified.
Exactly. You brought
And I
up.
just
Oh.
wanted to add to that. The beautiful thing about this conversation is the diversity of thought. So I absolutely agree with everything that you're saying. But in addition to that, for me, when I think about hiring the most qualified candidate, it also means, look, for us, we got to not only look at consumer electronics industry. So we need to kind of look outside. We don't necessarily also have to look at Silicon Valley.
Mhm.
We should be able to look at different states or different provinces for the people that are qualified for the job. So I just wanted to add that caveat in as well, in addition to everything that you said, because that also broadens your opportunity to kind of look for the right talent.
Right. And how do we as companies move forward based on quotas? Because what I'm getting from a lot of people is, well, now, all things being considered equal, if companies are focused on diversity and say there's a person of color applying for a job and a white person, and all things are considered equal, it's going to go to the diverse person now because we're doing diversity. What are your thoughts on that?
Judging by that laugh, we'll let Michelle go first.
We have a very different philosophy. I think we try not to actually have quotas in our organization as we're trying to, it's a journey, right? So
Yes.
this is not a sprint. So we've intentionally not had any KPIs, have not had any quotas when it comes to having a diverse workforce, because it's really difficult, to be honest. If I think about how many are there that are women engineers anyway, so am I really going to be able to achieve that specific quota, especially in the high-tech industry, when other people are trying to be just as diverse when it comes to gender perspective? So it's a very difficult question to answer, just because there's just not enough people in general to go around, let alone having a diverse candidate.
I know we're almost out of time here. So, one of the great things about this is we are having conversations. We are empowering people and enlightening people with information, but conversation is just that. It's conversation. What happens after the conversation? I want to ask both of you for, a quick recommendation for what we can do to move away from systemic racism, to dismantle the systems that are creating inequity for a lot of people. Michelle, would you like to take it first?
It's really difficult for tech organizations as well, because if you don't have the changes happening in government, in the criminal justice system, in our societies that we live in, it's so difficult to sustain some of the changes that organizations and companies do. One of the great things that we've been going through lately, this month, I've gone through so many meetings with our ERGs as an example, from our Galaxy of Black Professionals to our Equality Alliance to our next generation leaders. But I think it's important that, for allies, that we continue to listen, learn, educate ourselves. Don't be scared to ask questions if you're not certain about something, just for clarification. And then see what are some of the things that we can do to really not just say I'm an ally, but really do something to impact change. And luckily, with all the horrible things that have been happening in America, our younger generation is giving me so much hope just for the things that they're doing. They're done, and I think with all of that, they're coming together, the solidarity is there. It's really forcing organizations and companies to take action. And silence is not an option anymore, because our younger generation is just not having it.
Right. Thank you. Boom, what are your thoughts?
Definitely agree. Our younger generation is not having it. So, and that's who you need to really be focusing on. They're the ones who are going to run the world, and technology is helping them, they need to become one, because you see smartphones is a huge thing right now we're using to fight in these injustices. So we're being able to tape injustices, and people are able to see it now. Things that I used to grow up having to deal with myself, growing up in Ferguson, Florissant, Missouri, the things, if I could have had a smartphone back then, people would be so astonished and shocked and amazed at what we had to go through. Now we can see it, right? So we have these smartphones, we have social media to amplify, for people to even have rallies, to gather together across the nation. We're using social media. So what I would say to help fight systemic racism is to not just be diverse, inclusive in the people. It's also your system, your algorithms, right? That's the big thing about technology, is these algorithms. So we have this notion now of fighting algorithm bias and with facial recognition, but we need to also have algorithm equality. We also we see that we use algorithms in credit monitoring and showing that a person of color is a risk, and we need to fix those systems. We need to fix it because and use it instead to I said earlier, amplify Black voices, amplify Black investors, Black candidates. Technology, having Black people in technology is not new. They want to act like it's something that we could look forward to. No, 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 no. Listen, Black people have been inventing things for years that make your life easier. It wasn't just peanut butter. It was even the filament in a light bulb was from a Black person. Even though we say, Thomas Edison and Benjamin Franklin, all those people, a Black man did that. The doors to open up an elevator, we did that. So even with technology, you see with video cartridges, there's a lot of different technology that Black people a long time ago were involved in. So technology knows that, and they need to stop hiding behind the fact that they have to find qualified candidates now and try to find. They know we're there. They know we're here. And I work for a school that the founders they see that. They said, we need to find a system that allows people to become software engineers, because right now all we see is white men. And they're two white men from France. And say they saw that themselves. So they have removed barriers like upfront tuition, credits, GPA, all these things, a criminal background. So I'm proud to work for a school in Hobarton that is looking to break those barriers and let women and have indigenous people, veterans, Black and brown people become software engineers, because to change all this, we got to change the pipeline. It has to start from the access, right? We can't just say, here's qualified great candidates if nobody's having a chance. So I said a lot of things, but just to bring it back, Risha, I just want to say we have a lot of work to do, not just in our hiring, in our actual system itself. The technology we have itself needs to be changed.
Absolutely. Agreed. Thank you. You said something though that sparking another question for me really quick. You talked about them removing the barriers to payments and different things like that. What are your thoughts on, because I've been in conversations and with professional organizations, and they will say, hey, we need to lower our prices so that we can get people of color in here. And these are professional organizations. And it always, frankly, rubs me the wrong way, because I know that there are dollars in diverse communities, trillions of dollars in diverse communities. Oh, yeah. So I think that's a fallback for certain institutions to say, well, yeah, we want to be diverse, but we can't lower our prices. And that's a myth, but I heard you say that. And so it made me think about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I too personally hate when people discuss Black issues and all they say is, well, look what we're doing for the poor. It's something, again, that's another issue of what they want to, perpetuate Black people to be. But yeah, it's definitely something that we're not just, but at the same time, again, we're talking about systemic racism. So a lot of things have to do, a lot of people who are in those situations because of systemic racism, because of the, things outside of technology. So yes, we have to make sure we include things like funding but like you said, there's a lot of Black venture capitalists that don't have the backing from big companies. I think the biggest venture company back in Silicon Valley at one point in 2019 did not have a single Black VC. They weren't backing, and now they're saying I think with the whole George Floyd incident, we need to listen to you guys. What do we need to do? Because people challenged them. They said, you guys are not backing any Black venture capitalists, these Black firms that are putting their money where their mouth is. So if it's not coming from the top, even the people we do have, if they're not being supported from the top, we'll never see that. So that's why we challenge you to open your doors, whether it be through finance, even though we're not a monolith and we're not just a poor people that need help with money. We have money as well, but we need to make sure from the top down, because at the top, that 1%, we are not there. Black people, no matter what, we are not there. Brown people, we are not there. So we do have to open up financially. We have to, without creating this image that we're just poor in charity, we need charity. We also need to realize that 1% of controlling the wealth doesn't look like us.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you for doing this with me. It was great dialogue, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely.
Really appreciate it.
Can't wait to meet you in person, Oboom, and Michelle, I can't wait to see you again either.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Everybody have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Stay safe.
Both Michelle and Obum gave you their recommendations for what to do after the conversation. I would add that we start taking serious looks at equitable practices. We have to be as interested and as serious about equity at work as we are about diversity and inclusion. This is Risha Grant with 2 Works for You.